around, kind of living from one town to the other, to make sure they could eat and all that good stuff. So it was started out very humble, and then they started building a following and a network. And before you know it, they were able to kind of go around the country in this red Cadillac and build more and more people. And all of a sudden, it became more of what would be considered a movement. And eventually, they created nonprofit organizations, and they created what became the college. So um, with that in mind, they were doing a lot of touring by the time I came along. Uh, they were already traveling around the world. I think by the time I was 2 years old, uh, I had traveled to, like, I think about 7 countries. 2 years old, and I don't know. Some of your audience may remember this, but when we used to travel in the '70s, everybody wore a suit. A suit and tie, and it was very odd to see someone not in a more formal outfit. And so somewhere around, I'll have to dig it out. There's a picture of me as a toddler with a little suit and tie, traveling around as a kid. You can imagine. But yes, I did kind of grow up in this, and my crib was kind of right next to, Dr. Coll Francisco sharing and doing all this thing. So this was my first 7 years, my upbringing. I really didn't know any different to, as you do, this is just growing up, right? So around other people doing this type of thing, other leaders doing this kind of thing, growing up, other young people my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, growing up, we all grew up around this. And so it wasn't until I got to school, about 7 or so, that I was a little bit of a culture shock there, because not everybody thought the same way in this, I guess you could say, positive environment. So a lot of the stuff they talk about today about, the healthy foods and think positive thoughts and cleanse yourself and helping people, all this kind of, this was what they were pioneering, right? So this was my thought process growing up. This is how I organized my life. So coming into that world was definitely a change for me, and having to adapt to how different people work, different cultures, things like that. So that was probably the biggest change in my life initially. And then just moving on. I mean, there's a lot of things in between here, but growing up, and then I think when I was just 18, I decided to branch out. I knew I wanted to do more, get out, and of all places, I went and joined the Navy to really get out. It wasn't because I was trying to run away from something. I just had this desire inside to do some of those kinds of things. Within that time, I found myself in moving toward and got involved in the Naval Special Warfare Program, the SEAL teams. And I did that for the majority of my time in the service. I got out, and then came back, worked with the program and in the college, and followed Francisco and so forth. It was kind of a different perspective after that, coming from that environment, but it was very good. And then I decided to go out again, and I did a whole slew of opportunities and jobs, everything from delivering pizzas to building homes, and pretty much a wide variety of things. So I had a kind of a really wide background there, kind of jack of all trades, what came up. And then after the founder passed on, in 1999, I ended up stepping in to help run the program and the pieces that he was in charge of. And I've been pretty much doing it ever since then. And that's kind of brings us to a degree of current.
Yeah, I mean, it's having been engaged in a lot of the things that your dad did too, and touring with the programs, and that's how I cut my teeth in being of service and speaking and being on media and so on, was through those programs. And I was always struck by how everything that was spiritual. I'm a soul with a body. I have guidance. I'm free. I'm here to learn and grow. I have a purpose. All of those ideas were really distilled down into practicality. In other words, if if I can stay relaxed on that radio show, then I can be of greater service. If I can do my best to, find a clear direction, driving the car to the next city, and not get diverted or distracted. It was all very practical. And that's, I think, one of the hallmarks of what you continue today is practical spirituality. Could you talk about that a little bit? What's been the impact for you in building something that's down to earth, but yet, like you used to say, it's in this world, but it's not of it. But because it's in it, I do need to work with it.
That's well said. The college, one of the college's mottos is, or missions, is to democratize spiritual work. So in essence, it's to take a lot of these spiritual truths that have been out there for thousands of years, but to be able to bring them into the common person to be able to work with and to train in that. And up to that point, not that long ago, really, in our history, it was mainly the elite was involved in those kind of things. The priest or the monk or people who are educated and studied these kinds of things, and even philosophers, and of ancient. These were kind of the people that were focused in this area, and then would pass that information on to the masses or the people that were there. So the spirit of the college or the program in itself was, and that's why I said it, democratize spiritual work, bring that down to the essence. And just so that the basis is there, there's 5 little keys, and you've probably shared it to your audience before many times, so forgive me if this is a little redundant, but it does give,
Please do.
It does give the basis, right? So the 5 points, just to get people started of what we're talking about, is number 1, you are energy, right? You are a consciousness, you are a soul, you don't have a soul, you are a soul, this kind of thing. So number 1 is you are energy. There's something running that physical body of yours, and that's the life force. Number 2 is you're here to learn and grow. That's why you're here, right? So I've jokingly said in my programs and lectures in the public, I said, those philosophers could have just come to my first lecture and I could have just told them the meaning of life, and we would have been also, you wouldn't have to have that big wandering about the meaning of life. Now, you came here to learn and grow. That's number 2. Number 3 is you have a unique purpose and thrust in life. And what that means is that we all have this common denominator to learn and grow, to evolve, to move beyond, right? To grow up in consciousness, you could say. Since we all share that, the distinction is that you're unique, right? If you think about all of the thoughts you have had throughout time, all of the feelings you've experienced throughout time, the sum total of that makes you unique. There are people similar, but no one has had all the thoughts and all the feelings and the makeup that you have. So that means there's not another one like you in the universe. So I know a lot of your audience are people who do similar things like we do. So it's to help. One of the great things helping people to understand that I like to share is it's impossible to compete spiritually, right? We're on planet Earth. There's a bit of competition here. As long as I'm working with it in balance, I'm good. But spiritually, there is no competition, because what you come to do may not be what I've come to do. Because whilst we all come to learn and grow, there's going to be a uniqueness of what I've come to do. right? And a uniqueness of what this person comes to do, and so forth. So number 3 is you come with a unique purpose and thrust in lives, and that's part of what you're unfolding. Number 4 is you have help, right? You have spiritual help, guidance. People call this anything from your higher self to your angels, archetypes, you name it. But the bottom line is there's help. A master team, you could say, that's there to help you on your journey, help you in that process to learn and grow. And the 5th thing is you're free. You're free to make masterful messes and masterful successes. This is your life. And this is a very kind of important last component to remember in all of those first 4: your energy, you're here to learn and grow, you have a unique purpose, you have help, and you're free. And that is just kind of an underlying foundation to help people understand the big picture basics for us to share with other people on. So with that in mind, that is the spirit of all the programs that I know you and I work with. And the spirit of the college is to help people take the nucleus and pass it on to other people. So that is the kind of the, I guess, my short story long of the big picture there. And there's so much more. I mean, we have over 700 courses, hundreds of techniques. It's unbelievable, the voluminous amount of material and things that we work with. And I'm not saying that to brag or anything. I'm just saying there's a lot there that has been gathered throughout time from all different great groups and systems, but brought into a place to talk about how do we make this practical. So that was what you opened with, and I'll make a little point here, and I'd love to hear your feedback. But one thing that is very important in life and is very popular is meditation, right? This is gotten big over the last 50, 60 years. It's become mainstream, where that was pretty taboo in the past. Or prayer, right? Or prayer. These things can go hand in hand. They're a little bit different, but they go hand in hand. So an example of that practical energy you're describing is prayer without ceasing, or meditation in action, right? Yep. So am I working with those things while I'm stuck in traffic? Am I working with those things when I'm working with my children and I'm frustrated? Am I working with those things when I'm at work and I'm having the ups and downs of the day? Am I working with those things when the finances aren't exactly where I want them to be? So am I having that way of life, or am I having that way of worship? So that way of worship is the classic thing. Well, I go into the church every 7 days, and then I get my little hit, and then I go out and do my thing, start out good, and then I make a mess of myself, and boy, I better go back and get myself cleaned up, you know? So that's that energy of where I go into the church, but the church doesn't go into me, right? Same with a great many of, I'm sure people listening here have their own group things that they're doing. It's amazing how we work with people, but they don't really take it on. They don't really do the work and sincere to take it and make it a way of life in their daily activities. So that energy of practical spiritual energy or practical way of life, that means it's something that has been distilled down, separated from ideology, separated from what I think is right for somebody or what they think is right for me. Separate all that out, and the core essence can be something that I can do while I'm gardening, while I'm sharing with people, when I am having troubles financially, when I am having great financial success, right? Where I don't go into affluenza and go nuts, right? Am I actually bringing this as a way of life so I have balance, right? And
right.
As a little spot here, balance is not something where I have, 50% this and 50% that. Balance is something that's unique to the individual. So, you're a tremendous speaker. For instance, Paul, I've worked with you before. My God, you can be sharing with people 16 hours a day and you'd still be relaxed and good, where I might need a little bit of, rest. I'll do 8 hours, but I'm not going to do 16. So balance to each person is going to be unique. That's that whole unique. We come to do something unique. So it's just whether I can work with it in a way that is balancing for me and I can have that fulfilling life.
Yeah, yeah. As I was listening to you, I was resonating with a lot of conversations I've had lately about boundaries, about self-respect. We're going to talk about that here in a moment in more detail. But as you were talking, I was reminded, okay, I'm stuck in traffic, and here's this guy that cuts me off. Do I get pissed off at that guy, or do I go, he's energy, he's here to learn and grow. He has a unique purpose. He has his own guidance, and he's free to go ahead and do that. So, how much do I really embody that oneness of those concepts out in everybody? Now, does that mean that I just allow anybody to walk in the door of my home, and step all over it or whatever? No, I have my boundaries. I'm clear about that. But we were actually practicing a technique earlier today in one of our classes. It was this is me, that's not me technique. You've had that in many of your workshops. And it's amazing. It was amazing, Tiger, to listen to the people feel uncomfortable when they went, that's not me.
Yeah.
Because we're so used to being involved. We even had one person that say, I lose myself so much in my service and work with my clients, I get overwhelmed and I start resenting my clients.
Yes.
It's amazing, how if we don't take care of those 5 points for ourselves, how much we can allow the life to run me rather than me living my life. The
Yeah.
outer works me. And then the other thing that was so prominent too is a lot of people I've found are challenged by that I am free. Well, the government does this, the government does that. Well, you can choose. You can decide to go live somebody else, place else. You are free to choose. You are free to decide. You're free to make a change, and so on. So that concept that I'm never controlled unless I want to give that control to somebody else because I abdicate my own responsibility to myself, my accountability to myself. So those are some of the things that came out as you were talking, uh, and we keep going more on all this, but we actually had a question that somebody, when I announced this, someone asked, they've been in your programs before, and you brought up the words self-respect, human dignity, and live and let live. And they wanted to know, what does that have to do with rise in excellence, or how does that connect? Those concepts, self-respect, human dignity, and live and let live, because we're kind of in there rotating around those ideas anyway. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So where that was coming from is that, going back to your point, I'm in this world but not of it, right? So I'm here. I have to play the game of life whether I like it or not, right? In order to be here, which is a tremendous opportunity to be here, to have my adventures here and have my mishaps. This is a big deal, right? Not every soul has organized themselves to be here. So that means I'm going to be rubbing elbows, bumping up against other people, other ideologies, other perspectives, other politics, and so there's going to be things I have preferences for, preferences. And it's important that I remember that word amongst all of this, because indeed I have my preferences, right? I'm believe in free will, and I want everybody to have as much freedom as possible and all this kind of thing. But I have a preference to that. So there's different parties that I align with and I like, and that's the key word, I like. And that can stimulate the dislike, right? Or I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I want this. So the energy of and the perspective of self-respect, human dignity, and live and let live brings me back to the center to work with all kinds of people on planet Earth. It allows me to actually work with anyone who's willing to receive, who's sincere about wanting to move forward in their life, right? So it actually elevates me above the politics, above ideology, above right and wrong, right? And I know that's kind of a big pill to swallow, whether this is wrong and that's right, especially when I'm feeling pressure, right? That's wrong. But the bigger picture is talking about the people that you're sharing about. That's how I lose myself. You're talking about doing that technique. This is me and that's you. This is me and that's you. It's a whole technique. If you haven't done that, team, get with Paul. It's a pretty potent technique. The reason why many of us lose that and have to come back and have these regroupings, the one that you're describing, do those techniques, is because we've come to be of service. Chances are, if you're listening to this recording right now and listening to this podcast, you're probably come to be of service somehow, right? There's plenty of people who are still working through their life and still making the grade, doing their thing. So being of service to other people at a higher level, that's not their option yet. They're still having to get someplace. But when you start looking at personal growth, different modalities, different healings, different concepts, you're now moving kind of above the daily grind, and you're now moving up to this different place above survival, right? It's a different vibration, you could say, than the survival vibration. And there's groups and people that help. That's great things for the church and great things for nonprofits. They're doing tremendous works, right? Because a lot of people are in that survival vibe. When you start moving out of that, you start working with people who are outside of that survival energy, and they start questioning more. They want to understand more things, right? So that's where a lot of us will interact with people. And so if there's a calling, then chances are is I've come to be of service, right? There's a need in me. There's a need in me, a calling that won't go away, because I want to help. I want to be of service. Keep using that word service as opposed to just help, right? I came here to be of service, not a servant, right? And it's easy to get lost as people who are more spiritual oriented or personal development oriented, to let that energy of service switch into servant, right? I'm not here to cater to people. I'm here to uplift, right? I'm not here to make a hand out. I'm here to make a hand up, right? In other words, it's just a glorified way to say, I'm here to help people help themselves.
Right.
That is the higher standard that I was talking about when I opened. Am I here on a glory trip trying to save people? In other words, if I wasn't here or they don't get this thing, they're going to die and go to hell, or they're just going to be bad if they don't get this. So that's a glory trip, right? Rather than remembering they're free, they have a team of helpers, they've got their own purpose. Through all of the trials, all of the ups and downs, they're gonna make it. In the long run, they're gonna make it. Maybe my eyes lie to me and I see the terrible things that happen to them, but in the big span of who they are and what they've come to do, they're making the grade. So all I can really do is just help. I can assist. I can be of service. It's like greasing the tracks so it makes it easier for them. So that's a higher standard to say, I'm here to help people help themselves. And someday they'll outgrow me. I sure hope so, right? That's a different standard. And what it does at a personal level, it keeps me safe. It keeps me in the energy of love. It keeps me in the energy of self-respect. And I become an example because I am self-respect for myself. They get something out of it, right? They actually see someone doing it rather than don't do what I do, just do what I say, right? That kind of teacher mentality. So the energy of helping people help themselves means that I hold myself to a higher standard, not for them, for myself. Because I know, and I'm sure everybody watching this and listening to this know what it feels like in our lives to live that higher standard. It doesn't mean I'm above people. It means it feels good. And I have less troubles. I'm in that car in traffic and I don't get pissed off. I don't, right? Because I go, oh, there they go, right? I'm not down in the mud in survival vibe because I have myself to that higher standard. I recognize when my thoughts start going into a direction I don't want to go. And I say, no, thank you. I'm going back here. That's what I mean by that higher standard. So that energy of self-respect, which is largely what I'm talking about here, human dignity, meaning that I honor that same, I see you eye to eye. I don't see lesser than or greater than, whether I'm talking to the prime minister or the pauper. We are each a soul, right? Have our unique purpose. And yours, you've organized yourself to be there. You've organized yourself to be there. I've organized myself to be here, right? So even the person sweeping the streets, I would have to be trained to do that in order to do that opportunity, and the reverse would be true. So there's no greater or lesser. So that's that human dignity. I see you equal, right? Doesn't mean that, like you're saying, that I don't have my boundaries, right? Just because I see you as equal doesn't mean you're going to come and poop on my backyard, you know? You have your own backyard to poop in.
That's right.
And then the live and let live is that philosophy to make sure that I don't get into entangling alliances, right? I have my own mission and purpose, and I'm here to be of service back and support people, but I have my own mission. And if I stray from that too far, then what happens? The live and let live thing starts not happening. It starts going away. I start getting involved in their business. And in essence, I know this is going to sound a little controversial, but when I start getting involved in people's business too much, or I try to take care of people or save them, I'm involved in a high form, a spiritual form of theft, right? Because I'm taking their opportunity. So I ride a fine line of helping, being of service without doing it for them, right? The moment I move into an idea that I'm going to do it for you or I'll fix you, I'm taking from a soul. I'm taking from that person rather than I'm here to give, to be of service, to pass on what I've learned. And then you can take it and throw it in the dirt if you want. You can do great things with it, with what you want. I did my part. And I don't get into a moral issue of whether they threw it in the dirt or whether they did something great with it. And I pound my chest, look at what I did, right? So, and there's some of that. That's good too, right? But yeah, the point is that that's the big picture of self-respect, to make sure I have me and my thing, human dignity. I see everyone as equal, right? There's no greater or lesser souls. They're just souls who have organized themselves differently and working at a different state of consciousness. That's it. So I can respect the person on the street. I can respect the prime minister or president. There's just different levels of consciousness, right? And then the
Beautiful.
live and let live allows me to interact with all that. So that's that energy, the bigger picture, so that I can move smoothly in society and play the game of life and not get caught in the game.
And that, and listening to Tiger, that truly is the feeling of being in excellence. It's just I'm there at my best, and I'm helping everybody else to be at their best. Yeah, I haven't thought of this experience for a long time, but when you were talking about the uniqueness of people and so on, and allowing people to be themselves, I suddenly flashed on living in St. Louis, and every year they would have a St. Patrick's Day parade, a VIP fair, they called it, big giant celebration, and the Clydesdales would pull the wagon, the big wagon, and behind them was always a pooper scooper. He had the trash can and he'd poop scoop. Well, this particular guy, he was the most popular guy in the entire parade because he developed a way to twirl his shovel, just like a baton, and he'd do it behind his back and he'd throw it up in the air and catch it, and people just went bananas. And then he'd poop it and then put it in their front and then twirl it again, and here's this guy, this pooper scooper, the best, most excellent thing that you could imagine in the world, because thousands of people got a smile on their face. They enjoyed that energy. So, as the Pope said, who am I to judge? Everybody's got their unique thing. That guy that's on the highway that cuts you off, his spouse is probably having a baby and he needs to get to the hospital. There's always these energies and bigger reasons. So do I look at it from a point of view of stress, or do I look at it from a point of view of live and let live? And I'm going to get there anyway, probably in 30 seconds, 30 seconds more than what I would have if the guide slowed down or whatever it was. I'm still going to get there. So why do I make the big deals out of all that? I'm lost the perspective of my own self-respect, my own dignity of myself, and my own live. Paul, you need to live and let live for yourself. There's a great friend of mine that says, "Be kind to your future self."
Right.
Quite a concept when you really think about that energy of that beingness and so on. So I'm glad we talked about that, because I was having that question. What do we say to those people out there in this community? This community we're in right now, ENTV, is almost 26,000 people strong, 26,000 members. That only happened in a couple of years. And it's because of this connection you're talking about. People want to belong and be a part of something. So they join these kinds of Facebook groups and other communities so they can have that resonance of being a part of a movement. And a whole lot of those people are sole proprietors. They're in that business by themselves. And I've had so many people, they get lonely. They feel alone in their work. They feel, where's the support? And so when they listen to these kinds of talks and can start resonating with it, it actually uplifts just by being a part of the community. So I'm glad we talked about that, because there's thousands of people in this particular group that are service providers in one fashion or another. Healing,
Yeah.
business, all that stuff. And they need to hear not only that they're not alone, but there are solutions for helping them do better. I love what you said earlier in the green room. We had that conversation about don't try to do more, just do better. And so that's a feeling of how can I do better? What's my next step of excellence that I want to do? And that applies to the seasoned practitioner. It applies to the curious explorer who's just beginning to look into these things. We all grow at our own level, and there's no end to the answers that we can find for ourselves, and help other people find those answers for themselves.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're inspiring me that, one of our entry programs, the kind of a reawakening program, talks about the three loyalties.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I can tell you for myself. And, I opened with, I've grown up in this stuff, 50 some years. So uh, that idea that I have three loyalties, right? Loyalty to myself is number one. Loyalty to the smaller unit, people around me and places maybe I work, and loyalty to the big picture. And that could be my flag, the bigger picture of life and so forth. But if I don't, if I have trouble with my family, the people around me, my friends, or if I have trouble with the government, I have trouble with my country, I have trouble with bigger picture things in life, I can track it back to my first loyalty. I've
Yeah.
left out that first loyalty. So if I don't have loyalty to self, then I'm really not operating on anything, right? And that is a little bit of a slap in the face if I've been trained to be loyal to others first. To hear that, it's blasphemy, but the truth is, how can I actually be loyal to someone if I'm not loyal to myself first? And let's face it, this is out very common about love yourself, and this description is out there a lot. It's been focused and promoted, and that's a wonderful thing that it's out there. But I'm going to just hit it again, just for the sake of it, right? So the whole thing about love myself so I can love other people, this is what it boils down to for me. If I'm not loving myself at the level that I would love someone who I totally cherished, this person is worthy of greatness, worthy of my attention, worthy everything, a child or a great person that I have a great admiration for. There's a lot of love there. If I don't have that same love for myself, if I don't practice, right? We're talking about being practical. If I don't practice that same love, then when I go to express love, I'm expressing the idea of love. I am not expressing the true feeling of love because I have no basis for it. I'm only sharing love based on what the TV told me, or YouTube told me, or what the book told me, or what my teacher or my guru told me. I'm operating off of here, my head, and not here, my heart. So it's a simple thing, and it can be challenging to do it. Certainly, all of you listening know, they probably share it with other people. My God, they say, yeah, yes, 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 but then they don't do it, right? But they're not actually having that self-love. So I brought that up because, and the loyalties, because I've come here to be of service. And one of the things that we talk about, I know we bring this up, Paul, is, it's as people who work with this kind of stuff, personal development, spiritual growth at some level, it is important that we regroup with people of like mind at least every month. At least every month, that we come home to someone like you and I, where we can be in common. You don't even have to make a big deal out of it, even if it's to have a get together, a fellowship, right? Anything to just come back home. Oh, yes, that's right. This is me, right? And all that stuff out there, that's out there, right? I'm not going crazy. I'm not feeling this. That pressure is not even me. That pressure is over there, right? But now that I say that, at least every month, do not go past once a quarter. Do not, if you go
Yeah.
past 3 months of not regrouping, not doing something for yourself, and I'm telling you because I work in this college and I work with a lot of leaders. I see with my own eyes and hands what happens to people when they don't regroup with like-minded people. They don't have a time that they come back and
Yeah.
work on themselves. It is suffering 101. It is suffering at the worst because my own wisdom, my own knowledge gets used against me. I start overthinking things. I start getting emotional on things. I get drained with things. And just like your story with that gentleman, I resent the very person that I came to help, and they came to work with me because I have to resent because I'm so far out that I have to push away to survive. So that energy of coming together, like some of the classes that you do and some of the profiles and so, they're so important to do something for yourself once a month outside of the normal. Don't just go back to your own modality for once a month. Do something else. Do something. Go on a hiking trip with friends, or go do something to rejuvenate the spirit and to have that clarity of what's me and what's you. That is to say, what's all those other people, what's society, hell, what's even my family, and what's me, right? Even the people I love and care
Yeah.
about need a little bit of a retreat just to be able to come back and say, great, I can be loving in this family. I can be great at this opportunity and job. I can be great in society because I know what's me and not me. So that, going back to that point, I don't mean to overstate it, but it is so
Yeah. Yeah.
important that we all maintain our self-respect and honor people's journey. Oh, they're in a train wreck. They're going to have a train wreck. That's okay. I won't look. And then when I hear the thud, I'll be there to for the hand, to help, kind of thing. Because I know, God knows, I have my train wrecks. I am not immune. It's just I do it at a higher level, right? I'm
You
kidding.
do it very well.
I do it very
Right.
well. I'm very
That's
refined and
right.
sophisticated.
That's right. Tiger, as in the next few minutes, we'll start wrapping up here and I want to have you share about some of the things coming up. I appreciate you taking the time away from planning some of the retreats you got coming up to be with us today. I can see there in your office, in front of the world map, it's global. Wayshowers College is definitely global, been all over the world, 40 different countries. But you're reminding me of a class that Sandra Keller, my daughter, and I collaborate on classes. We have our own group, but many of you know that, the Empowered Soul Network, where we interviewed a lot of people. We were talking today about the depths of loyalty. That loyalty to myself. How deep, what kind of a scuba dive do you want to take in that? To the point of, do I jump and react when the phone rings? If the baby's crying in the crib, do I jump up to go take care of it? Or do I take a deep breath, find my clearness in myself, and then walk over to take care of it? In other words, how strong am I pivoted in me before I get involved in whatever else is going on that may be needed? It may be needed. The baby needs something. It may be an important phone call, but at least I then have the ability, if I'm clear with that, to then discern what is the opportunity there and check with that inner guidance that we talk about. Well, wait, is this something that I really need to be doing? No, Paul, it's not something you really need to do right now. Keep focused on what you're doing. You call them back later. They'll leave a text. So it's that, how clear am I in my steps forward? I could be going in a Porsche 150 miles an hour and I can be relaxed inside. So it's that energy that's very, very important for me to not just monitor it, but begin to be it. Somebody said to me earlier today, we're human being, not human doing. So how am I fitting into that energy inside? And that's what all the things that we're talking about. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And there's this big thing out there now, Tiger, called the 7 levels of why. Why? And we've done that in one of those particular, I think it's the flow of my contracts profile. Why do you want to do that? Oh, you want a new car? Why do you want that new car? All right, well, because I want to be more free. Well, why do you want to be more free? And you go down at least to that deeper level that gets you into the
Yes.
core of what the reality really is.
Yes.
And you start to discern, well, God, maybe I really don't want that because, I really don't want to go to Chicago. I don't want it, whatever it is. So it really is that clarification of what are my motives? That's what I hear you talking about. What are my motives? So anyway, just some thoughts on that. So one of the things that I know Francisco Coll was very adept at, and you've kept going, and then you adapt that into classes and retreats and so on, is really the discernment of the energies that are happening in our world, in our galaxy system, in the solar system. The sun shines on the earth, and there certain times there's solar flares that affect the electricity and so on. So he was very good at defining those energies and bringing them down to earth, even to the point of view where, well, even to the point where there's actually a key vibration for each month. And I know this month is vital. And then I think coming up in the end of this next month is altitude.
All right.
So what are those? What is the vibration coming up for us in the coming month? And I know you actually have a regrouping on this tomorrow. There's a simple membership people can do to be a part of one of those regroupings, that spiritual freedom style regrouping that you do at the end of every month, and to rally people together like you were talking about. The coming month, altitude, and then morph that into where that fits into some of the retreats you've got coming up. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So spiritually or energetically, astrally, or whatever you want to, I'm just using terms, but it meaning the same thing. There's things that move through planet Earth, and they're waves. They're waves of energy, you could say. And we have the opportunity to kind of distill it. Most sensitive people will pick these kinds of things up early and identify what's coming and where we're at and where we're going. In a more strict way of looking at this is you'll have people who can future cast. They're very prophetic in their. We talk about the 4 gifts in a lot of our programs. We have all 4 gifts, and your prophetic part is that part of you that has a radar system. It can sense way ahead. So the idea that we have this energy moving through each year, there's kind of this fresh energy that builds on the previous one. And we're in an energy that could probably best be described as slipstream, a slipstream, right? This is the energy where there can be a lot of feeling right now that we're just caught up in this stuff that's moving, right? Or that's why people, more recently, there's a lot of talk about politics or government and the goings on around me and my finances. It can feel like I'm getting pulled with all this slipstream, right?
Right.
So that's an energy we're in. That's a flow that we're in. And if I kind of know that, then actually I can get on top of it. I can get in front of it. I can actually start leading it, be a part of it, rather than it being reactive to it. I can act with it. So we're in an energy of slipstream right now. We'll be in that for a couple more months. Usually around September is usually when the energy shifts to the next wave of energy for the year. So you have the calendar year in January, but spiritually the year kind of begins in September. That's the shift spiritually. So then we move into a new energy, and that new energy, well, I guess the best way to describe it would be a spear of inspiration. Spear of inspiration. It's an odd phrase, but it's to denote the change. And that's kind of what I want to wrap up with, is we're been in an energy and a cycle for a while. And this is not to say like, oh, there's some magic that's going to suddenly happen. I'm just saying that, the tide comes up and the tide goes down. The tide comes up and the tide we have winter, and then we go into spring, and all this kind of thing. So every 10,000 years, the planet wobbles. We go through a full wobble, and then we have the ice age, and then you have a warming, right? This is just cyclical. So we're coming into that shift of energy, of a cycle that's being changed and now moving to a new one. And that we've been in that, and now we're going to start really feeling the beginnings of that in heading toward 2026 and beyond. So that sphere of inspiration begins that fresh. What does that mean? It means that there's going to be a lot of opportunity, a lot of extra backing and support to spear ahead in your activities, in your service, in your personal growth. There's a lot of inner leadership that's going to be required of you, of us, right? So it's much more of, we're moving from that larger, nice, big circle of groups of friends. And we will continue to have that. But what's needed coming up is that energy of breaking out, right? Not hurting people. Don't want to make any confusion. We're not trying to say, just breaking out, being a way shower of who you are and what you've come to do. You mentioned that Rise of Excellence. You started this because that's what you want. That same, and now you help all these people listening, right? That same energy is now needed. You're a forerunner, because now we need hundreds, if not thousands, of people doing the same thing and spearheading, you could use that word, their thing, and being of service. That inner leadership, that outer leadership, is what's going to be needed. So that's what we're moving from Slipstream into that sphere of inspiration. It's much more of that go get it energy, be of service, keep moving forward. Don't get caught up in little moral issues. Keep moving forward. This is a need. And if I don't, here's an example in the other direction. If I don't lead myself, I'm going to get caught up with all of the rights and wrongs, all of the big deals, all of the soap operas, much easier, because there's this energy that's going to back and support at a universal level, for lack of a better word, those who want to spear and move forward, those who want to take their own life to the next level, those who want to move their financial position from here to here. I didn't make a big jump there, just from here to here. There's extra backing for that. Even if you want to go way up top high and change the whole dynamics, that's fine too. But there's a lot of backing and support to spear ahead, to move forward more than it was before. So a lot of what I'm doing, and what the programs that you and I work with are going to be focused on that. So whether it's a simple 3-hour workshop, or where it's a full-on week-long program that you do, there's going to be all revolving around making sure we have the basics and start moving and helping people spear ahead. The inner leadership is what's going to be needed. That, are your motives clear for what you really want? Why do you want that? That's what you were bringing up earlier. So that higher standards of working with people become a necessity. And if I have a message for some of us who do this work, make spiritual things, make personal growth cool. Make it cool. Be enthusiastic about it. Be charismatic. They say spirit is attracted to enthusiasm, right? It's like that, light yourself on fire and everybody comes to watch you burn, right? Make the foundations and fundamentals of what you're about, and maybe those 5 points that I shared, make them cool again. Be a way shower of them, because that's what all the programs that I've been working with. There's a lot of memberships. There's a lot of calendars you can get involved in. If those of you interested in those kinds of things, see Paul about that. He actually is a facilitator and distributor of a lot of that stuff. But they help you with the basics so that you can springboard in there. And when I say the basics, don't think they're just like kindergarten stuff. This stuff is great stuff. It like carries well past just the basics. I say the word fundamentals and foundations, but it is powerful stuff that can help me whether I'm in traffic, whether I'm working on healing with people, whether I'm by myself, whether all that kind of stuff. It just carries so much further. So moving forward, you're going to see a lot more, at least from the college's perspective, you're going to see a lot more of helping people, bringing services out, focused on that sphere energy, that moving forward, making sure people feel that they got everything that they need and there's no holes in their training, right? That's a big thing that I'm sure many people watching this know that, wow, there's a lot of holes in that person's training, or that, oh gosh, that person, wow, they didn't never learn to ride a bike, So the things that I can take for granted, they don't know yet. They might have the genius over here, but they've lost the overall foundation, right? So that's going to be really important as we start projecting forward and we move with those things. So if you're interested, go visit wayshowerscollege.com, connect with Paul.
Yeah.
He'll help you with the profiles, the workshops. It is amazing. It doesn't matter whether you're doing this kind of work for 100 years. Trust me, I've done this stuff since birth. I go back into some of these basic workshops that Paul does and Sandra and all the rest of them. I get heaps out of it. It is a huge regrouping for myself. I'm not saying that just for a plug and promote, shameless promotion. I'm saying because I mean it. It is good stuff. And it really is that regrouping once a month that keeps me on track so I can be of service.
Well said, Tiger. Well said. You're reminding me that every year, every sports team in any sports, they go back to basic training.
Right.
The master best baseball players in the world go back and they just start throwing the ball back and forth with each other. They start playing catch. And then they stretch and then they do some little runs and all that. And then by the middle of July, they're hitting home runs and superstar stuff and all of that. And so the reason why I'm reminded of that is because it's going back to what we've talked about for the last hour, is how much am I really truly taking care of myself so that I can be of service? Is my car tuned up?
Yes.
If I change the oil, are my tires bald or can they go through snow?
Yes.
So it's really taking inventory as a service provider. And this is what I'm learning and continuing to build in myself, but I'm also hearing it from all the people that I've been interviewing in ENTV and Empowered Soul Network and here and Rise in Excellence, is that there's a need to do better. There's a need to stand up taller. There's a need to set my next energy of what I personally want for myself to up level, to shift and rise a little bit higher, as you were talking about, Tiger. And that is there's that old saying in one of the books that the college has, most powerful are those who have themselves in their own power. So you can adapt any word to that. Most of service to those or most of service to themselves. You could play with that phrase, put any words in there back and forth. But am I doing that? Am I really practicing what I preach? Am I really being that for myself? And it doesn't make any difference where we've been. I've interviewed some people that have been through several bouts of cancer and they're being of service. It doesn't make any difference, where are they moving forward, as you talked about earlier on. We're moving forward. So there you go, folks. Wayshowscollege.com. I'll make sure we put that in the comments. My website, fairly new website, just got done with it, is riseinexcellence.com. Riseinexcellence.com. Please reach out and connect if I can be of service to you in any way. Please reach out and connect directly. You can DM either one of us. We're both in Facebook, so please reach out. Tiger Coll, Paul Kellogg, DM us and let us know how we can be of service. I am going to put a synopsis of this interview above the live interview. And I'll tag some of you I know that have already been in there. Had a challenge with getting the comments going from my phone. So I'll make sure I get in there and tag you can get in there. We can answer some of the questions and comments that people were asking there. So, and also know the internet was a little flaky in and out at some point. So please bear with it. And I'm going to try and figure out how to post this also and get this out to the college so that they can repost it and connect up more. Tiger Coll, Osceola, Iowa. Wayshowers College Retreat Center. Thank you so much for being a part of Rising Excellence.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here.
Good stuff, brother. Stick around for a minute. We'll do our takeaways afterwards. That's it for my day, you guys. I hope you're either starting your day or ending your day with a feeling of joy and happiness. Again, let us know how we can be of service. You have a wonderful tomorrow and weekend coming up. Talk to you soon.